royalty.
They kind of f***ed up their whole thing, went way too hard on we're victims, and they assessed the mood of their generation and America correctly in that we are lovers.
What happens when Meghan Markle's carefully curated holiday cheer meets South Park's razor-sharp satire? Chaos. The latest episode didn't hold back, taking aim at her Netflix holiday special and exaggerating the quirks, performances, and carefully staged moments that many viewers had quietly questioned for months. Satire doesn't invent criticism. It amplifies the discomfort and skepticism audiences already feel, turning subtle doubts about authenticity and performance into something impossible to ignore. Could this parody finally show the world what people have really been thinking about Meghan's public persona? If you thought celebrity satire was something that only lived in tabloid headlines and late-night monologues, South Park just reminded us how deeply pop culture can cut. When the animated juggernaut released its episode, The Worldwide Privacy Tour, it didn't just poke fun at Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. It threw a spotlight on the uncomfortable disconnect between the couple's public persona and how many people perceive them in real life. And according to reports, Meghan was not thrilled about it.
In the style of South Park, but with Meghan Markle running the show instead of Cartman, and instead of a cozy little town, we're stuck on a rented Netflix soundstage with a sign reading, "Without love, Meghan."
Now, if you're not familiar with South Park, let me paint the picture. This is a show that has been a cultural lightning rod for decades, famous for taking aim at literally everyone in the spotlight, from politicians to pop stars, from religious institutions to social movements. They don't do subtle. They don't do polite. They do satire in its rawest, most exaggerated form, and they never hold back. Over the years, that biting approach has generated controversy, legal threats, even bans. But it's also made the show a kind of barometer for what the culture actually thinks, even if it doesn't say it openly. So when South Park decided to skew Meghan and Harry, they didn't just throw a few jokes their way. They built an entire episode around the idea that the couple repeatedly insists they want privacy, while at the exact same time plastering themselves all over the media. That paradox, wanting privacy but constantly appearing in press tours, documentaries, Netflix projects, and big interviews, became the entire joke of the episode. It's a satire of perception as much as it is of personality. The characters based on them carry signs that say, "We want privacy," yet they do everything except hide from cameras. That contradiction is the centerpiece of South Park's critique. The episode mirrors real life in a way that only satire can. Instead of inventing drama, it exaggerates what people are already whispering about quietly on social media or in comment sections everywhere. The Prince and Princess of Canada, the show's stand-ins for Harry and Meghan, move to the sleepy town of South Park to escape attention. But instead, they bring the spotlight with them. They promote a book, a clear nod to Harry's memoir Spare. They dominate talk shows, and they even get mocked for their past public behavior. One scene has locals annoyed at their private jet, parked outside someone's house while they complain about media intrusion. That image isn't just funny, it's pointed. It encapsulates the whole theme of irony that South Park loves to exploit.
And clean up. South Park, those masters of mayhem, just dropped an episode so savage it's got everyone from Twitter warriors to major news outlets losing their minds. The name...
And here's where it gets real. Because unlike some other celebrity parodies that are shrugged off with a laugh, this one reportedly struck a nerve. Multiple sources indicated that Meghan was left upset and overwhelmed by how she and Harry were depicted. So much so that she refused to watch the episode in full. That detail cracks the satire open even wider, because part of the joke the show makes is about how seriously the couple takes themselves and their public image. If she truly refuses to watch something that was made about her, it feeds right back into the narrative the episode is lampooning. There were even rumors early on that the couple might pursue legal action against the creators, as if satire could be challenged in court. Those whispers circulated in celebrity news circles and sparked a lot of chatter online. But almost immediately, Harry and Meghan's representatives shut that down, calling the lawsuit talk totally baseless, boring reports. So no legal battle is actually brewing, at least officially.
And apparently it has really upset Meghan Markle.
Your millions from Netflix for no one knows what.
Put it with the rest of them.
It all started when a bizarre clip began making the rounds on Instagram.
Just imagine for a second what it would feel like if an entire episode of a primetime show boiled down your public life to a caricature. From the outside, it might seem like just another cartoon gag. But for someone in the spotlight, especially someone as media savvy and reputation conscious as Meghan Markle, getting roasted in such a relentless way can feel personal. You start to wonder, is the joke funny to them, or does it hit a softer spot underneath all the bravado? And that's where the conversation around this whole thing gets interesting. It's easy for fans and critics alike to laugh and share clips, but the slice of the public that sees this as an overstep also reveals something deeper. When people already feel uneasy about a public figure's authenticity, any exaggerated portrayal can feel less like satire and more like validation of their own doubts. That's why this episode has stirred so much debate. Instead of just asking, is it funny? The audience ended up asking, does this reflect something true about how we see this couple? Many comments online following the episode suggested exactly that people weren't just laughing at exaggeration, they were recognizing an image they already held. At the same time, it's worth remembering that not every viewer saw the episode as cruel or unfair. South Park is satire. It's meant to exaggerate, to poke and to prod, and to make audiences think as much as they laugh. There's a long history of the show skewering powerful figures without those figures crumbling. The creators, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, have spoken before about how backlash is part of what makes the show what it is. They've taken aim at religious leaders, celebrities from all sides of the cultural spectrum, politicians of every stripe. No one is off limits. Still, this moment feels different because it intersects with something very contemporary: the fallout from Meghan and Harry's Netflix ventures, their holiday special, With Love. Meghan, Holiday Celebration, was supposed to be a warm, intimate, festive look at life, love, and seasonal traditions. But a lot of the criticism of that show has echoed some of the same themes South Park played with. Many reviewers and commenters describe the special as overly curated and lacking a real sense of spontaneity, something that made it feel less like joyful holiday television and more like an image exercise. Some even labeled the special as uninspired or pointless, noting that audiences weren't responding to it the way Netflix might have hoped. So here's the crux of it all. This South Park episode didn't happen in a vacuum. It came at a time when Meghan and Harry's media presence has been under scrutiny, with critics questioning everything from their motives to their methods of staying in the public eye. South Park didn't invent that conversation. It amplified it, reframed it, and made it digestible as comedy. And the fact that Meghan might have felt stung by it tells us a lot about how sensitive public perception can be, especially for someone who has spent years trying to balance privacy with publicity. Whether you think South Park went too far or just hit the nail on the head, there's no denying one thing. The episode sparked a conversation about authenticity, visibility, and what it means when you're both a public figure and a private person. And that's precisely what good satire aims to do. Not just make you laugh, but make you think.
Was something pulled straight from her worst nightmares. South Park. Yes, again, the iconic Savage animated show dropped a brand new episode that tore her Paris Fashion Week appearance to shreds, and the fallout, absolutely brutal.
You know when you hear something, and part of you thinks, oh, that's just another TV show making a joke. And then you realize it actually hit harder than expected. That's exactly what happened when South Park dropped its episode poking fun at Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. The episode didn't just make a couple of jokes. It touched on something a lot of people have been quietly thinking for a while, and it did it in that signature South Park way that's equal parts hilarious, shocking, and uncomfortable. And the thing is, for Meghan, who has spent years navigating intense public scrutiny, this didn't feel like just another joke. According to insiders, it left her annoyed, overwhelmed, and feeling misunderstood on a very personal level. Let's take this from the top. South Park is famous for its biting satire. For decades, the show has taken aim at politicians, celebrities, and cultural moments, with a style that's never subtle and often brutal. If there's a public figure with a spotlight on them, especially one who talks about sincerity or privacy while constantly being in the media, South Park will eventually find that contradiction and run it through the comedy grinder. The creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone have never been shy about mocking people from all sides of the cultural and political spectrum, and their fans expect that kind of unfiltered roast. It's part of the reason the show has stayed relevant for so long. So when South Park aired its episode titled The Worldwide Privacy Tour, it wasn't just another pop culture parody. It was a carefully crafted satire that hit exactly at what many people see as the central tension in Meghan and Harry's public life. The idea that they demand privacy while constantly stepping into the global spotlight. In the episode, the characters that are clearly modeled after Meghan and Harry, referred to as the prince and his wife from Canada, go around insisting they want privacy, while at the very same time plastering themselves all over media platforms. They hold signs in interviews saying, "Do not look at us," and repeatedly explain that being famous is just so hard, all while promoting their own memoir and making media appearances. It's that paradox, wanting privacy but actively promoting yourself and your projects, that South Park really leaned into. The episode mirrored real moments we've seen over the past few years. Interviews on major news networks, best-selling books, Netflix series, and high-profile magazine features. Instead of inventing something new, South Park took what was already visible and exaggerated it just enough that you couldn't ignore the contradiction anymore. And that's the essence of satire at its best. Not to lie, but to stretch the truth to the point where you can't help but see it in a new light. Now here's where things get interesting. Reports have circulated that Meghan Markle was not thrilled about this portrayal. People close to her say she felt annoyed and overwhelmed by the whole thing, and that she didn't even want to watch the episode herself, saying it was too uncomfortable or hurtful to sit through. That reaction lines up with the core of the satire. Many commentators have long suggested that Meghan's public appearances sometimes feel overly curated or staged, and this South Park episode simply threw that tension into sharp relief. When someone works so hard to cultivate a certain image, a joke that seems to undermine that image doesn't just amuse, it stings. There were even whispers online that Meghan and Harry might pursue legal action over the episode, which shows just how seriously some people took the situation. But representatives for the couple dismissed those talks as totally baseless and nonsense, clarifying that there was no lawsuit coming. Still, the fact that the conversation even reached that level tells you this wasn't just another roast that people laughed at and then forgot about. The parody hit close to a real tension in their public narrative, a tension that South Park amplified with surgical precision.
Latte, good old basic latte. You could do a lavender gray latte. Doesn't it just sound chic?
She's back with love, money. Meghan.
Around the same time, Meghan's latest Netflix project, With Love, Meghan Holiday Celebration, was released, and it received a pretty rough reception from critics and a significant portion of the public. Instead of the warm, cozy holiday special that might have been expected, many critics slammed the episode as uninspired and purposeless. Reviewers described it as dull background noise, suggesting that watching it felt more like enduring a slideshow of perfectly staged scenes than enjoying a heartfelt celebration. One well-known critic called it quite mad and a little bit sad, and others said it lacked substance, warmth, or anything genuinely aspirational. The special even scored extremely low on review aggregator sites, with some early reports showing almost no positive reviews from professional critics at all. And the public reaction, that wasn't exactly glowing either. On social media, many viewers echoed the same sentiments, that the special felt staged and unengaging, and that watching it left them with a sense of fatigue rather than festive joy. People complained it didn't feel genuine or spontaneous, instead coming off as a tightly edited image of holiday cheer that didn't quite land the way a real, heartfelt special might. There were jokes in comment threads about how the special failed to make Netflix's weekly top 10, and some viewers said they found it boring or hard to sit through. It's funny because when you look at the way South Park satirized Meghan and Harry, focusing on that tension between I want privacy, and here we are on a world tour of publicity. The criticism of the holiday special fits right into that same narrative. People complained that the special was too polished or too curated, and that it didn't feel like a natural family holiday at all. The disconnect between what was shown and what the audience felt they were meant to feel created this sense of dissonance, which is exactly the lever satire likes to pull. So why did satire hit this particular subject so hard? Why not another celebrity holiday special? It comes down to the couple's unique journey from British royalty to global media personalities. Meghan and Harry stepped back from their roles as senior royals with massive worldwide attention. And since then, they've built new roles for themselves as authors, producers, and public figures in a media landscape. Their move was framed as a quest for privacy and authenticity, which resonated with many at first. But as time went on, critics and audiences alike began to see a pattern where calls for privacy were followed by major TV deals, big interviews, and documentaries. That contradiction, wanting peace and quiet, while also seeking platforms to tell their story, is exactly the sort of thing satirists feast on. South Park didn't invent that contradiction. It simply held up a funhouse mirror to it, in a way that made people laugh, but also made them think. And you know that feeling when a friend tells a joke that's funny because it's true. That's exactly what many people reacted to online. Many commentators pointed out that Meghan's Netflix special felt more like a branding exercise than a genuine holiday moment, which was the same point South Park was making in its own, wildly exaggerated way. Commenters described the special as staged or lacking authenticity, aligning with the satire's focal point on perceived inauthenticity. Whether Meghan actually goes off publicly about the episode or chooses to keep things private, the bigger story here isn't just the joke itself. It's the fact that satire resonated so deeply because it tapped into widespread commentary about performance versus authenticity. It's one thing for critics to call a show dull, but it's another thing entirely when a cultural institution like South Park takes that criticism and turns it into a comedic narrative watched by millions. At the end of the day, this moment says as much about our cultural moment as it does about Meghan and Harry. We live in an age where public figures are expected to share their lives, but also guard their privacy, where media saturation can feel exhausting, yet audiences crave authenticity. When someone's public persona seems tightly managed or curated, especially as they speak about sincerity and intention, satire is going to find the fault lines. And when it does, people notice. So yeah, Meghan didn't just get roasted. She got roped into a conversation about the very heart of celebrity and authenticity in the digital age. That's why this South Park parody didn't just make people laugh. It made them think, debate, and reflect. And that's exactly why it landed the way it did. If you've been following Meghan Markle and Prince Harry over the last few years, you've probably noticed a tension in how they present themselves. On one hand, they talk about wanting privacy and keeping their personal lives away from the media. On the other hand, they step into book deals, Netflix specials, and interviews with major magazines. It's that tension, wanting privacy while embracing global attention, that made them a perfect target for South Park, and their latest episode has stirred quite a bit of chatter. The episode, titled The Worldwide Privacy Tour, zeroed in on exactly that contradiction, turning it into a visual, satirical narrative that made audiences laugh, cringe, and think all at once. South Park has been a cultural staple for decades because it doesn't just make fun of people. It reflects something audiences are already thinking but maybe don't say out loud. The show thrives on exaggeration, absurdity, and irony, but at its core, it's a mirror of public perception. When the creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone focused on Meghan and Harry, they weren't inventing criticism. They were taking quiet unease and amplifying it, turning subtle doubts into something everyone could see. The episode portrayed animated versions of the couple, insisting they wanted privacy, while simultaneously plastering themselves across media platforms. They were in interviews, doing Netflix specials, appearing in magazine features, and somehow complaining about public attention all at once. That's the essence of satire. It doesn't create the audience's skepticism, it follows it, highlights it, and sometimes forces a laugh at its own expense. The timing of the episode was key. It came shortly after Meghan's With Love. Meghan, holiday celebration premiered on Netflix. Critics were already skeptical of the special, calling it uninspired and largely purposeless. Media outlets noted that the special felt staged, overly polished, and lacking genuine warmth. Commenters online agreed, describing the show as stiff and curated to a fault, as if every gesture, smile, and decoration had been carefully orchestrated for cameras rather than experienced naturally. In that sense, the public's reaction to the holiday special perfectly aligned with South Park's satire. The show simply took the discomfort people were already feeling about Meghan's media presence and turned it into comedy. That's why it landed so effectively. Audiences had already internalized the critique, so the exaggeration felt both hilarious and uncomfortably familiar. What makes this particularly interesting is how the satire works on multiple levels. The first layer is obvious. It's funny. Watching animated versions of Harry and Meghan complain about wanting privacy, while doing the opposite is absurd and entertaining. But the deeper layer, the cultural commentary, is where it gets really sharp. South Park didn't just mock their behavior, it highlighted a larger question about public perception, authenticity, and performance. How real is what we're seeing? How much of the couple's public life is carefully managed image rather than genuine spontaneity? When satire captures that tension, it stops being just entertainment. It becomes a social lens through which viewers examine the behaviors of public figures. Sources close to Meghan reportedly said she felt upset and overwhelmed by the episode. She didn't even watch it in full, which suggests just how sensitive the satire hit. Imagine putting years of effort into crafting a public persona, trying to balance openness with privacy, and then seeing it exaggerated in such a public and visible way. For someone in her position, it's understandable that the depiction might feel invasive or frustrating. There were even rumors of possible legal action, though Meghan and Harry's representatives quickly denied those claims, calling them totally baseless. Still, the intensity of the reaction highlights a key point. Satire follows public perception. It doesn't create it. The episode wasn't a random attack. It was a reflection of the narrative that had already been forming online and in media commentary. Culturally, this moment tells us a lot about how audiences process celebrity authenticity. People are increasingly sensitive to image versus reality. In the age of social media, where curated content dominates and public figures control their messaging, audiences are trained to read between the lines. If someone's gestures, words, or productions feel too polished, it raises questions. South Park capitalized on that unease, translating what had been subtle skepticism into a format that's both humorous and visible. By exaggerating perceived contradictions, wanting privacy while pursuing global media attention, the The show turned abstract unease into something concrete, something audiences could point to and discuss. The satire also speaks to broader patterns in celebrity culture. Meghan and Harry are high profile not just because they were royalty, but because they've chosen media production as a key part of their public life. Books, documentaries, interviews, and Netflix specials all make them accessible to the public, but they also invite scrutiny. When you combine that with messaging about privacy, you get a perfect storm for parody. South Park didn't invent the critique, it just accelerated and amplified it, turning quiet discomfort into observable comedy. That's the genius of good satire. It follows perception. It doesn't force it. It's why audiences laughed and cringed at the same time. They recognized the truth hidden in the exaggeration. It's also worth noting how the episode echoes the real-world response to the Netflix special. Critics described with love Meghan, holiday celebration as lacking heart and authenticity, and social media audiences reflected similar fatigue. People weren't outraged. They were disengaged, describing the special as staged, overly managed, or unengaging. Those are exactly the same themes South Park highlighted in its parody. The joke wasn't just about Harry and Meghan's behavior. It was about a cultural pattern. The public noticing when someone's presentation doesn't match what they claim to be experiencing. In that sense, the satire acted as a validation of audience perception. Interestingly, the episode also exposes the limits of controlled image making. When public figures attempt to manage their perception too tightly, even small deviations can seem exaggerated or performative. South Park turned that observation into a storyline, but the cultural lesson applies outside of animation. Audiences are increasingly attuned to performative authenticity. When every gesture is curated, every moment orchestrated, it becomes harder to convince viewers that what they're seeing is real. The show simply dramatized that phenomenon. Another subtle aspect is how this moment reflects media culture itself. It's not just Meghan and Harry who are being scrutinized, it's the entire ecosystem of celebrity production. Netflix invests in specials, media outlets cover them, and audiences respond. Satire like South Park thrives in that ecosystem because it exposes contradictions that already exist within the media narrative. It's a reminder that satire doesn't need to create a story to be effective, it just needs to illuminate what people already suspect. In this case, the show highlighted the tension between authenticity and performance, turning quiet commentary into vivid comedy. Ultimately, the episode reinforces a key cultural point. Satire is a mirror, not a hammer. It doesn't fabricate the unease audiences feel about celebrity behavior, it reframes it. Meghan and Harry's Netflix special may have drawn criticism for being staged or uninspiring, but South Park amplified that reaction, showing just how deeply audiences are questioning authenticity in the age of curated celebrity. By exaggerating contradictions, turning private public tensions into a visual joke, and leaning into existing perceptions, the episode allowed audiences to laugh while also reflecting on the narrative they already sensed. For Meghan, this combination of public fatigue and biting satire must have felt like a collision of worlds. Her carefully managed media presence, designed to convey warmth, authenticity, and authority, was met with an animated exaggeration that made her actions feel simultaneously humorous and scrutinized. That's exactly what satire does. It follows public perception, it doesn't invent it, and it makes private doubts visible in a form that's undeniable. In this case, it exposed a tension between image and reality that had been quietly accumulating for years, showing how comedy can both entertain and illuminate cultural truths. By the end of the episode, the audience had already drawn conclusions that didn't need to be argued. South Park wasn't trying to create controversy or provoke outrage. It was reflecting the cultural perception of a couple who have long walked the line between private life and public exposure. For audiences, it was validation of their unease. For Meghan, it was a reminder that in the age of curated celebrity, every gesture, word, and production is subject to scrutiny. And that's why this episode mattered so much. It wasn't just comedy, it was a cultural lens, showing how satire follows public perception, turns quiet discomfort into observable commentary, and exposes narratives audiences already question about authenticity, performance, and celebrity life.